If you're looking at working with ceramics such as plates, cups and tiles, but you're not sure what tools to purchase or what they do, well, in this video, I'm going to be showing you a range of different tools that you can use for ceramics, and I'm also going to be showing you the differences between those tools, and also I'm going to be sharing some tips along the way. And I'm going to show you that right now. Even though all these tools work with ceramic, you definitely don't need all these tools. So I'm going to go through and tell you what each of them do, and I'm also going to demonstrate some of the cuts and things that each of them do. And along the way, I'm going to share with you a couple of tips that I think will make cutting ceramics a lot easier for you. So I'm going to clear this area and then we'll get started. These are the scorer breaker, and these weigh 330 grams. Now, these have a wheel on the bottom that allow you to score the tile, and they have a breaker on top, and this allows you to break the tile where you have scored it. So let's just demo that. So I'm going to put the wheel on where I want to score it. I'm going to push down on it, and I'm just going to then move it along, listening to that score sound. Then I'm going to put the scoring wheel underneath where I've scored it, and the breaker on top, and the score line goes in the middle of that breaker section there. So the wings are on either side of your score line. That's about right. There you go. And it broke. Now, these are quite handy, but I generally don't use them that much for scoring because I find them a little bit cumbersome and a little bit hard to control. But I do use them for breaking. So if I'm going to be scoring a tile, I will use a glass scorer. It can be pretty well any type of glass scorer. So let's just demo this. I'm going to put it there. And I can easily see where I'm scoring. Whereas these are a bit more cumbersome because these wings here, you can't really see where you've scored it. Well, not that well. I suppose if you're a tiler, it doesn't really matter because your cuts aren't going to be that accurate. This is where I then get these, put it over the score line, the wings on either side, push, and it does a pretty good job. So that's what I mainly use for when I'm scoring the tile and when I'm breaking the tile. These are the Lepinette side biters, and these weigh 316 grams. Now, just be aware that when I'm talking about the weights of some of these tools, you may find that a few of them might be manufactured under a different brand or a generic brand, and they could be slightly heavier or lighter. But I think you'll find the majority of these tools are only manufactured under their own brand name. But sometimes like these, you can get generic side biters, but this is a Lepinette brand anyway. Now, I'm not a big fan of side biters. They're curved on one side and flat on the other side. And I'm not a big fan for really one reason. When you squeeze the handles, the force of squeezing those handles is not multiplied. For instance, when we're talking about these compound nippers here, when you squeeze those handles, due to the design of this mechanism in here, when you squeeze those handles, the force of squeezing them is multiplied. So it's actually easier on your hands to actually cut or nip a tile. With these, there is no such design. So you're really just squeezing the two handles together. And if you want to cut something that's quite hard, you have to really squeeze those handles hard. These are quite popular amongst some mosaic artists, and I fully understand that, but it's just I'm not keen on them because of that. I'm kind of going to be working harder to use these to make the cut, especially on hard tiles. So if we're going to want to, say, cut this tile here, we cut it by just putting it on the edge of the tile and squeezing, and it cuts it across it. With these, you can also do some nibbling on the tile as well. They're not very expensive, but I just think that there are better tools out there that will be easier on your hands when you're cutting ceramics. These are a generic brand compound nipper, and these weigh 418 grams. Now, like I said in the previous segment, these nippers actually have a mechanism that actually multiplies the force when you squeeze those handles down to make nipping of ceramic or harder materials easier. Now, I have used these quite often, and I do find that they work quite well when you are nipping harder materials. The handles do open up reasonably wide, and you can put an elastic band around there to close them up a little bit, and they are quite a bulky item. But for me, I have found them to be really quite good for nipping harder materials. And to give you an idea, I have this purple tile here, and I've gone around it and cut the edges off it. But if I wanted to actually nip the edge there to finite that edge, I just put it in there and I can go around the outside, and it does quite a good job of nipping that edge, as you can see here. They work really quite well, and then I can tidy up that bit there when I've cut it. They're not terribly expensive, and it is pretty easy on your hands. The only, like I say, disadvantage is that they do open up quite wide and they are quite bulky. If you're wanting to break, say, this tile here, which is a different tile, this is a harder material, you can just put it on the corner there and cut it. Actually, that's actually softer material. Let's try a harder one. Let's try some chinker. Put that in there, squeeze, and it breaks it quite well. This is Winkleman's chinker. These ones are the Montolit crab nippers, and these weigh 410 grams. Now, the first thing you'll notice is the wheels are actually mounted on this face here. Whereas with normal double-wheeled nippers, they're mounted on this face here. So they are mounted very differently. So when you close these ones, they come together to actually do the nipping. But when you close these ones, they actually come together like that. They actually come in like that. Now, this has quite a large throat on it, so therefore you can actually go further into a tile or into the glass. Now, these are great for using on harder materials, porcelain, ceramics, harder materials in general. But they're also good to use on glass. For instance, if we wanted to do like a feather cut with this, we can just go in part way and cut it, and it'll do a feather cut. But being with such a deep throat on it, we can also go in further and do larger cuts. Oh look, there's a fish. You've got to use your imagination. But certainly also on tile, again, we'll go back to this large round tile here. We can also go in on the line and cut it. Now, it does leave a little bit of an edge there, but that's easy to go into and just cut it like that. We can also kind of grind it around on the edge if you want to do a smoother cut by going in there and just moving it slightly and just grinding it. And it does quite a nice finish. But where these come into their own really is if you want to get into the tile or the glass and do a deeper cut. These are another pair of Montolit nippers, and these come in at 378 grams. Now, these are very different to your Montolit crab nippers. If you notice, the wheels are mounted here on the crab nippers, whereas the wheels mounted on these Montolit nippers are here. Very different. These are also angled compared to these ones. So again, you've got two different types of Montolit nippers, and they are both suitable for harder ceramics. They are both suitable for glass and smalty, but they also cut very differently. So going back to this pair here, if we open these right up, they're angled for a reason. If we wanted to cut along this piece of tile, or you're a tiler and you want to cut into an area, you can cut back here and start. But if we have a look at a normal or another pair of double-wheeled nippers that the nippers themselves are not angled, then you can't really cut back here because it's all going to be too difficult with the handles being in the way. You can start back here, that's not an issue, but going up here, you can't. Whereas these ones, no issue at all. You can just cut all the way along or wherever you want to cut. When it comes to things like stained glass, it may not cut it that well, or if at all, because if we put these into here, I'm pushing hard and I can't cut it. And the reason being is not that this glass is too difficult, it's just that the nippers do not close enough. So you may find, depending on the thickness of your glass, these may not work. Now what some people do is they'll take the bumpers off and they'll grind down these little bumpers ever so slightly. They don't take a lot off, but they do take enough off, just enough off each side. And then they put the bumpers back on. And because they've ground those little lugs just a little bit, these will close more and it will then cut your stained glass. I haven't done that, but that is what I know people do, and it seems to work very, very well for them. These are the Lepinette double-wheeled nipper, and these are a good general double-wheeled nipper. They're a reasonable quality, reasonably priced, and these will cut quite a range of different materials: ceramics, crockery, tile, porcelain, glass. They're a good general all-round tool, and these are what I first started with. They don't come with this. I put that on there for something else, but they're a good general all-round tool, and they do a nice job. For instance, if we're cutting out this tile, this circle, there you go, does a nice job. And we can take out those nips as well, those little bits there. But it does a really good job. And let's see if they cut chinker. Yep, they cut that too. It's a little bit more forceful than some of the other tools that I've demonstrated, but it still works. And of course, when it comes to, oh, here's our fish. Okay, so you have to use your imagination, but it is there. Stay with me on it. But when it comes to the fish, we can do nice feather cuts. And that, there you go. And even this type of material here, this harder material, they are certainly quite reasonably priced. I enjoy using them. I've had these since I first started and they're going really well. They're not as comfortable as some of the nippers in the marketplace. They come in at 302 grams, and I found them to be a really good general nipper for ceramics and many other materials. These are the C-Bell Max Pro compound nippers, and they weigh 284 grams. And these are very different to the compound nippers that are already out in the marketplace. And I'll show you why they are so much better and so different to the ones that are in the marketplace. With these ones, you can push a button in, turn the lug, that lug there, and they can open right up. So if you have smaller hands or you don't need to open them that wide, you can push that button in, turn it, and they won't open up as wide, which means the handles won't open up as wide. Means you're going to have less strain on your hands and also when you're cutting. The other thing is too that these blades are replaceable. So that means that when these wear down, you can buy the straight blades again, or you can get blades that have a curve in them. And they are really good for cutting glass. The straight blades work as well, but in some cases with glass, they can actually splinter or shatter the glass depending on the type of glass it is, because there are different manufacturers of stained glass. But for cutting tile, for instance, around this edge here, they cut it really quite well. Not a huge amount of force is required. And the reason being is because, see, works quite well. Because they actually, when you squeeze them, they multiply the force. Similar to these compound nippers, in multiplying the force as well. These are lighter, slimmer, and easier to work with than other compound nippers in the marketplace that I've come across. If we wanted to, here's a piece of tile, if we wanted to put it in the jaws and break that, cuts it quite easily. Chinker, let's have a look at the chinker. We'll put that in its little jaw here, just on the edge there, and it breaks it. Now, the reason why we put things like on the edge of the jaws, like that, and not right in, although we can do it right in, let's give it a go. Yep, still cuts it beautifully. But the reason why we put it on the edge there is because it takes a little force to actually push down on it and cut the tile, in this case the chinker. It takes little force to do that, whereas generally, depending on the material, putting it right in the middle there, you might have to squeeze harder to achieve the same result. And here's some glass here. We can put it in there and cut it. There you go. Some more. It'll cut longer lengths like that. But once it goes beyond a certain distance, then of course the glass has a mind of its own. All right, here's some Metallica gold, Sapphire gold. So we'll put it in there and cut it like butter. And as you can see in this video here that's up on screen now, I was demonstrating it with the curved blades. And as you can see, it works really well in cutting the glass. So let's just see how this actually now cuts. And to be honest, looking at this, I have to say that it actually is a cleaner cut. It's not to say you can't use the straight blades, but certainly I think for glass, the curved blades do a really good job. Well, these are a great compound nipper to look at because they have quite a few benefits over your ordinary compound nippers. These are the Seabell ceramic tile cutters, and these weigh 350 grams. Now, these are great for working with harder materials. They'll also work with glass as well. They do have these swappable blades, straight blades or curved blades, and I find that the curved blades are better with working with glass because I find that using the straight blades, although they will work with glass, but I find in some cases they can shatter it or crush the glass. If we were wanting to cut this tile, we would be able to put it in there, just on the edge there, and break it like that. And then we could go in and nip it off if we wanted to. Now, of course, these do not have the multiplication force that these ones do. Like I said again in the previous video on the compound nippers, when we look at these, they multiply the force, so it's less stress on your hands and it makes it easier when cutting ceramic tile. So these, although cheaper and work well, but they don't have that type of mechanism there that multiplies the force. So we can put it in there and you can feel it's a bit harder on your hands, but they work really well. And they shape quite well. There you go. Be able to just clean that up a bit. Look at that. Nicely done around there. And of course, let's try the chinker. Put it on the edge there. Cuts it beautifully. Now here's a tip that I like to do. I've cut out the rest of this circle and I've left these pointy bits on. I've actually accentuated them so you could see them. But what I like to do to get them smooth around there, because sometimes when we're cutting, it's supposed to be small nips rather than large nips. It makes it easier, you know, it's kind of like the divide and conquer. So if you're cutting out a shape, small nips are always better than big nips, especially if the tile is really hard. But when we've got these points here, what I like to do, and it can be any of these, it can be the Montolits, the compounds, the Lepinites, It can be any type. What I like to do is put the compound nippers just in the edge there, push on this to cut the tile, but I'm all going to push down as well this way. And I'm not going to push hard on this because this is going to do the work. And I'm just going to get there and just nip it like that. And it just smooths that edge out and you do away with that pointy bit. Do the same thing with the montolets. Again, here's another spiky bit round here. And I'm just going to get it, put it in the montolets and pull down. And it takes care, and you can do it in more than one place. See? And it gives you that really nice smooth edge. And it works with any number of tools. It will even work with these side biters. Again, putting it in there and pulling the tile down. There you go. And see how smooth it comes out? Yes, you can use a grinder if you want it smoother again, but I don't really think it's necessary. I think that looks pretty good. Around 8 years ago, I came up with a method called, or that I called it, the wet water method. And I found it very helpful when it came to shaping and cutting harder ceramic tiles. For instance, the Johnson made in Malaysia tiles that we have here in Australia. So what happens is, if I want to cut this out, and you can use any one of the tools that I've mentioned here, but I'm going to use the Lepinette double-wheeled nippers because these are the ones that are most used out in the marketplace and a good general all-round nipper. But if I want to cut this out, let's say I'll cut the corner, and as you can see, it takes quite a bit of pressure to actually do that. If I want to cut this out and continue cutting it out, which I can do by just going around it, but it can be a little bit difficult, or you may not get the finish that you actually want. What you can do is dip it in water, pull it up, give it a bit of a shake, and then it makes it easier. Hear the noise? It's dulled down because the water actually does make it easier to cut the tile. Of course, you need to have a marker that is not going to wash off in water. But see how it's easier on my hand, and you can tell by the noise. It doesn't have that real high, clunky sound. So if you're having trouble with your tile in cutting, shaping, and nipping, give the wet water method a go because it works for ceramics, tiles, and I haven't used it on plates and that, but certainly the feedback I received when I did this, that it worked actually very well on plates too. And of course, you have these jaggedy bits coming out where I haven't cut it properly. And again, we put as I showed you before, we put the jagged bit in the tile and we pull down on it. And see how that really does take off those pointy bits. And this piece doesn't even need grinding. And this is a very hard tile. Look at that edge. Absolutely beautiful. Well, I'm going to clear up this area, and when I come back, I'm going to give you my opinion on the tools that I think you should have that will do the majority of your cutting and shaping for your ceramic needs. Probably the 3 tools I would be looking at in my studio that's going to give me the best range of cuts across the broadest range of materials. Then I'd be looking at this pair of Seabell compound nippers. I'd be looking at this pair of Montolet double-wheeled nippers and a glass scorer. Now, Obviously, if you get a glass scorer, you're going to need to break the tile. And you can do that manually, but buying a pair of these, which are not expensive, and you can probably buy a cheaper pair than these anyway, just to break the tile. These are the ones that I would be going for to have in my studio, because these are going to give you the broadest range of materials that you are able to score, break, or cut. These will work the best across the board, and that's in my personal opinion. So anyway, I hope you've taken something away from this video. If you have any comments or questions, put them down in the bottom of the comments section of the YouTube channel. Let me know your thoughts, whether you agree with me, whether you disagree with me, whether I've left out a tool that you would consider to be better than any of these. Put the comment down. I'm always interested in your opinion, and I know others are as well. If you like the video, give it a like. If you see value in it, share it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy.